Ah, Smart Water, now in a sleek can.
This feels cool, literally.
Perfect for social gatherings and on the go.
Should I start wearing turtlenecks?
One sip at a time, friend. Smart Water cans, for those with a taste for taste. Get yours today.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. On Memorial Day, President Donald Trump announced the full and unconditional pardon of former Culpeper County, Virginia Sheriff Scott Jenkins. In my opinion, the political prosecution of Sheriff Jenkins was among the most egregious attacks on law enforcement by the Biden administration. Jenkins was prosecuted for taking alleged bribes to deputize several men after an elaborate FBI sting campaign, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison after being convicted in a Soviet-style show trial. The sheriff was scheduled to turn himself in this morning to federal prison, where he would have been in the general population with murderers and drug dealers and worse. And I think the president recognized that not only was Scott Jenkins an innocent man, but his life was truly in danger. Joining us now, former Culpeper County Sheriff Scott Jenkins himself.
Hello, sir. Thank you for having me.
I'm very, very happy for you and your family. I've been through this same exact experience, as you know, and I can't even begin to describe the wave of relief. The president said online, Sheriff Scott Jenkins and his wife Patricia and their family have been dragged through hell by corrupt and weaponized Biden DOJ. In fact, during his trial, when Sheriff Jenkins tried to offer exculpatory evidence to defend himself, the Biden judge, Robert Ballou, refused to allow it, shut him down, and then went on a tirade. So, Sheriff Jenkins, first of all, congratulations, and God bless you and your family. What evidence did the judge refuse to allow you to present in your own defense?
Well, there were so many things that we weren't allowed to even speak of if I testified directly, let alone to call certain witnesses. For example, if you are attacking me and charging me for things related to an auxiliary deputy program, which is a volunteer deputy program, many sheriffs have those across the country, then you would think I'd be able to call many other auxiliary deputies to counter what's being alleged. We couldn't call any of them. The fact that these alleged bribes and things were nothing more than campaign contributions. And when this informant, this setup that they made where this individual came to me and said, well, some of them give you cash instead of a check because they're, generally always checks. And I said, I don't care. It goes through the treasurer and deposited, so on. Well, that cash donations that they thought was so horrible that I'd accepted and actually they handed to me, which was all a setup. It was there in a gun safe in my home with the other checks and things ready for the next campaign finance report to be turned in with the treasurer and so forth. When they approached me on that day that I sat down for 2 hours with no lawyer, answered all their questions, never lied. They never charged me with a lie or anything. But during that time, they sat with a search warrant in hand for my home. And they would not go serve the search warrant because they knew when I said, well, just go out there now. All the money's there. I haven't used any of it for myself. It's there waiting to be turned in as normal. And, of course, there were a number of other things I can go into, but not being able to call, things like that to highlight that and say, look, this money has remained there all this time, all these many months until trial. And it was there until, long after I was sentenced. It's remained in the same place, hoping, that we could use that to defend ourselves. My lawyers, they tried unsuccessfully to get, a number of things into the court to use as our defense. And, any of those things would be shot down. The fact that I had so loyally supported President Trump since, before he was first president and in his first term so much, working with border sheriffs and other issues, we couldn't mention that in the trial. When I got on the stand to try to defend myself at the end and just tell my side, they would not let me even speak of my support of President Trump and the fact that I was a conservative, constitutional sheriff and so on. I actually blurted out a few times mistakenly after being warned by the judge to say, well, this is false. You're telling the jury that a sheriff can't hire someone who has, for example, been a felon. That's not right. Jelly Roll is a famous singer right now. He's currently now an auxiliary deputy up in Michigan or somewhere. There's celebrities all over who've been sworn into these honorary roles and so on. And as I started to name some of the ones I had done the same thing with, the judge, every time that we cross a line to give reasonable explanations of why certain things are allowed and why we do things as sheriffs all across the country, we couldn't say it, we couldn't talk about it. So how on earth can you defend yourself and get a jury to understand the real truth of the authority of a sheriff if you can't speak about those things? And then that's the whole crux of the point. I'd like to just make it simple for people to understand. A judge and a federal prosecutor, DOJ ladies, all three of them, should only speak true facts to the court, never lies, never false information. If they do it once, what else would they do? Well, when they sentenced me, I use this one good example of a judge, and I'm not angry at the judge. I'm sure he's a fine man, but the man sat there and said three demonstrably false things about a sheriff, or myself, in his sentencing of me. He's putting me in prison, and in his speech, he says that I hired unqualified, unvetted people and did not train them as required as auxiliary deputies. And all three of those things are absolutely false, and they're provable. Never was anyone in 12 years of me being sheriff, and we can prove it as a fact. Every person that took an oath and became a deputy or auxiliary deputy, the fact is a Virginia sheriff is not required to have any training provided for them if they want to accept that responsibility and liability. They are not required to be anything other than a U.S. citizen, have a high school diploma or equivalent, 18 years old, and they don't have to have this laundry list of qualifications that maybe an FBI agent or a state trooper or other police officers do. Sheriffs have wide latitude in Virginia and across the country. I mean, it's the oldest law enforcement. That's how they swear in posses. You don't go out suddenly as a sheriff when you're trying to quell a riot or go after a fugitive and others as sheriffs, and the laws never change. You don't have to go out and do background checks and all the formalities of a police department 200 years ago. No, sheriffs were given wide latitude, and it never changed. The code stayed the same. So when these FBI agents sat down, knocked on my door, and started questioning, the very first day, they were furious because I didn't laugh at them. I was very respectful. I mean, it was emotional to have, read your rights and or whatever, you're being questioned, and I'm saying, guys, you don't know what you're talking about. You're thinking about FBI or state police or others. The sheriff's not required to do any of this stuff. I'm not bound by any of those things. Well, they stuck to it from that day, and when I tried to have an expert say, well, no, the law, the Constitution of Virginia says this for sheriffs. This doesn't relate. This is police chiefs and others. It's completely separate law and requirements. They had it in their minds, and they put it in the mind of the juries and ultimately even a judge. They convinced them and overruled everything we tried to fight it with to say, you people are insane. You are lying to the court. You are saying that a sheriff is required to do X, Y, and Z, and we are not. They never introduced anything to back up their statements. They didn't even introduce a code section, let alone, to have like the Virginia Sheriff's Association lawyer or others come in as experts and say, no, a Virginia sheriff does not have to require this or that of a deputy. So the whole premise of their case just from that, and they took that and just snowballed it into one thing after another, and they convinced a jury that I swear, my God, they were not my peers, but, I knew, we went through the and it was insane, the people that we had there judging me. But even the judge, I said to someone yesterday, I said, what we need to do is let's just throw down the gauntlet. How about those three ladies from DOJ that prosecuted me and that judge? Let's all stand before the court, and I will gamble the 10 years going to prison if they'll do the same. And let's challenge what that judge said about me on my sentencing date. If he said one factual thing wrong to the world, then shouldn't it all be in question? And he said three things about a sheriff and what I did that were absolutely false. and no one even looks at it. No one even thinks about it. And if that's allowed to stand, what other things have they done? And that's what they did in the whole damn case. That money they accused me of taking, it was there. It remained there all those many months and was never like they said it was. And I'm sorry, I'll stop and give you a moment. I'm sorry I get on a roll. And
No. I appreciate it. You finally get a chance to tell your side of things. I read the mainstream media stories, and they're all slanderous. They all imply that you somehow took this money and put it in your pocket when these were perfectly legal campaign contributions. Look, you were convicted on a laundry list of trumped-up charges, including 1 count of conspiracy, counts of honest services fraud, and 7 counts of bribery concerning programs that receive federal funds. These fake charges remind me of the dozens of phony felonies the Democrats charged President Trump with, the charges that they charged General Flynn with, the charges they came after me with. And I've experienced what you're talking about. The jury forewoman in my case said during jury selection that she had never heard of me, didn't know who I was unfamiliar with my case. Turned out that she'd been attacking me by name for 19 months prior to her being selected as a juror in my case. She'd been attacking me by name regarding the very case in which she was selected as a juror, but she kept that on a private setting on both Twitter and Facebook, so it could not be detected. And the judge ruled that that was not evidence of bias and refused to vacate my conviction. It's interesting that one of the jurors in my case said to the Washington Post afterwards that the judge never came to the jury room. Why would you just volunteer that, unless, of course, the judge did illegally come to the jury room when the jury got stuck on 1 count? So I've seen this Soviet-style witch hunt up front. Sheriff, I guess my most important question is, which of your actions do you think got you targeted? Was it your disagreements with Governor Northam over gun control and the Second Amendment rights guaranteed by our Constitution? Was it your objection to some of the draconian measures pertaining to COVID-19? Or was it your strong stance against illegal and dangerous immigrants in your county? Or lastly, is it possible the fact that you and 2 other sheriffs talked about investigating Hunter Biden's laptop? Why did they single you out? Why, in your opinion, were you targeted?
I found that the first of those things you mentioned, from the gun stance down to me doubling down in a press conference with Chip Roy and border sheriffs in fall of 22, talking about the same thing. If Congress did a gun ban, I was going to do the same thing with other sheriffs and nullify their law. I think all of that was important, and I didn't even know some of the connections with Governor Northam when he threatened me publicly to come after me later. I didn't know there was a background there with Richmond law firms and lawyers like James Comey. It's a whole other story, but I don't know any of those things. I do know for certain, though, I had a conversation the end of 22 when I was already in their eye. They had put a phone tap, legal wiretap from a judge on my phone, and unbeknownst to me, I had a call with Wayne Ivey, a sheriff in Brevard, Florida, along with another Maryland sheriff. We had all been part of the original 7 sheriffs that under Trump, we've supported him, and when he was out of office, we formed Protect America Now, a PAC to continue the fight. And so that group of us, we were close, and Wayne had made a call and had several of us on the call. And in that call, Wayne said, look, I have a former U.S. attorney, a state attorney general, and some others that want us to fly us into a secure place, and we're going to view the Hunter Biden laptop, see the crimes that are on it, and I'll return back to our home states and obtain charges against Hunter. From there, once he's locked down, the rest of the things against the rest of the family would be taken over by these 2 attorneys and pursued further. And Wayne said, look, if I do this by myself, I'm going to die. My brakes will be cut or something mysterious. But if a half dozen of us can just join together, we'll probably survive and make it happen. And so we all said we're in. And, I think that's the key. When the most powerful man in the world, his son, you're coming after him. I'm a father. I understand you'd probably do anything to save your child, even in something like that. And you can't tell me that a conversation like that, the lowliest FBI agent in existence, if he heard that on a wiretap, he is obligated to run that up the ladder. And I know darn well that call had to come to the ear of the AG and in turn whoever else. Of course, now I'm not trying to be mean, but we apparently had a zombie in the office, and we had other people unknowns to us, unelected, being the president for a while now. And I wouldn't doubt that Hunter Biden didn't even hear that call with me, and may have been one of the ones saying to whoever over at DOJ, "Hey, help me, come, get rid of this guy." Who knows what was said? We'll never know. But I know, God willing, God put President Trump in there. I know that. He's had a hand in our country from the founding, and God bless President Trump. He's put people like Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino and Cash Patel in, and I think they're, Ed Martin. My God, and that talk about irony, to have a guy who's not approved for the DC job and end up where he's at. I mean, that's a blessing itself to have him handling pardons and other things. I truly believe they're going to clean up this mess. And
all right, for just tuning in, we're talking to Sheriff Scott Jenkins. He was pardoned yesterday by President Donald Trump. You're in the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back with more of the Sheriff.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back in the Stone Zone. We're talking to Sheriff Scott Jenkins. He was pardoned yesterday, Memorial Day, by President Donald Trump of trumped-up charges. The sheriff has served valiantly. There's a famous story about him in December of 2021 when the police were in pursuit of an active shooter who traveled across 3 counties firing an AK-47 at both the police and citizens, and he was stopped only when Sheriff Jenkins exchanged fire with 19 rounds, killing that suspect before he could reach his target of killing his own family. Give you some idea what a courageous and valiant man is joining us here today. What they do, you experience this, Sheriff Jenkins, is they try to destroy you financially so you lose the resources to fight. You sold your home and spent everything you had for your legal defense. You had nothing left to fight an appeal with. You and your brothers have served honorably for many years in law enforcement. You're the proud parent of 2 teenagers, and you care for your elderly parents. I think this was an extraordinary act of both mercy and justice by President Donald Trump. But I must tell you, I was happy to join those, including General Flynn and Ed Martin, in urging the president to extend clemency in your case. But the support you had from sheriffs across the country, the number of sheriffs who contacted me to bring my attention to your case and to tell me that you had been wrong, that you were an honest, decent man as well as a courageous law enforcement officer, and to urge me to get involved was really heartening. Your colleagues, Sheriff, hold you in the highest possible regard, and you should know that.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate hearing that. You kind of go into a hole when you're going through this and don't know what people are communicating, but I appreciate that, and I'll never be able to thank all of you enough. Thank you for mentioning General Flynn. I met him some years ago, and well, my God, his storied life is amazing. And you, sir, I hope we get to meet. All of you who have put a kind word in and did the work you did to communicate with the White House and others to help, I'm forever indebted. I just want to be left alone now and rest and my family heal. But I am 100%. If there's something I can ever do for my country or for the president and what needs to be done for his mission, I'm there 100%. I'm just thankful we got Ed Martin in there. They have, a pardon czar as well. I've never met Ms. Johnson, but I said the other day to my wife, I said, well, I don't know. I'm done with law enforcement. I guess I'm out of it, but I could even volunteer and go help if they need help screening or looking at applicants or something to help people who've been wrongly, treated through the system. But I'm just forever grateful.
Well, it's yet another example of the power of prayer, because I can tell you there were literally thousands of people praying for you and your family through this entire ordeal. Prayer sustained me and my family when they tried to frame me because I refused to testify falsely against President Donald Trump. That's the entire reason for their charges against me. After all, you can't lie under oath about Russian collusion that never actually happened, can you? So I have been in your shoes, my friend, and the Lord heard those prayers, which is why the president became well aware and acquainted with your case, and the fact that you had also, just as they tried to do to him, just as they tried to do to General Flynn, just like they successfully did to Paul Manafort, just like they tried to do to me, that you were framed for strictly political reasons. I want to thank you for joining us today in the Stone Zone. God bless you and your family. Please give them my best regards. May your family heal. God bless you, my friend. And thanks, everybody, for joining us here in the Stone Zone.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?